Good morning. Welcome. So today, well, this one here is about the type of factoring in our handy dandy factoring guide is called perfect square trinomials. When can we use this one? Well, it has to be a trinomial. The first term and the third term need to be perfect squares. And when you take the square root of the first term and the square root of the third term, whatever the middle term, it has to equal to 2 times the square root of the first term times the square root of the third term. Now let's take a look at a simple example, but first, if you look up here, here's the formulas. If it's a perfect square trinomial, x squared plus 2xy plus y squared will factor to the square root of the first term plus the square root of the second term, and all of that will be squared, okay? It'll make more sense when we do an actual example. For this one, if it's subtraction here between the first and the second term, and you have a perfect square here and a perfect square for the third term, again, this is a formula. And in the middle term, well, if you take the square root of the first term and the square root of the second term, and you multiply 2 times those, and it equals the same thing in the middle, it factors to x minus y squared. So think about those formulas a little bit, and then let's try one. So we're going to try this one. Let's see why we can do it. This is a perfect square. X squared is a perfect square because the square root of x squared is x. This is a perfect square. 9 is a perfect square. The square root of 9 is 3. And so the square root of this would be x, right? And the square root of 9 would be 3. Now the way that you can check, the third final check to make sure you can use this method is 2 times x times 3 equals 6x. We need it to equal 2xy. So 2 times x times 3 is 6x. So this checks out. Now, what this factors to, and it's real neat, I mean, it's just a neat little type of factoring. It factors to x plus 3 times x plus 3, which you can write as x plus 3 squared. Now, you may have noticed that this was just as factorable with magic numbers, which is great because if you think of two numbers that multiply to 9 and add to 6, well, those two numbers are 3 and 3. So for this particular one, you could have also used that process, but I wanted to start you with an easy one. Let's see one where perfect square trinomials is definitely a much more efficient way of using that type of factoring. So I'm going to erase all this right here. And we're going to do, let's see, 36x squared y squared plus 84xy plus 49. So right off the bat, you see it's a trinomial, right? You see it's a trinomial. You also see that the number in front is not 1, so you might be thinking AC, and you could probably try that, but it would be pretty difficult to, it's probably not going to work. You know, if you multiply a times c, 36 times 49 is such a huge number anyway. So what I want you to recognize in a situation like this is that 36x squared y squared is a perfect square. So is 49. So let's see what the square roots of each of those terms are. So the square root of 36x squared y squared is 6xy. And the square root of the third term, 49, is 7. And the last thing we need to do to check to see if we can use this method is multiply 6xy times 7 times 2, 2xy. That's what we need the middle term to equal to. If 2 times 6xy times 7 equals 84xy, then we can use this method. All right, so 6 times 7 is 42. Times xy is 42xy, and times 2 would give me 84xy. So 2 times 6xy times 7 equals 84xy. So since this is a perfect square, this is a perfect square, and 2 times the square root of this, 6xy, times the square root of that 7, equals this middle term, we can use this method, and it's really neat. It saves us a lot of headache on some really hard factoring problems. So once you've identified that, to factor, it's really easy. So since it's plus here, our sign in the middle is going to be plus. So the square root of the first term, 36x squared y squared, is 6xy, plus the square root of the second term is 7, and then it's going to be times the same thing, 6xy plus 7, or you can write it as 6xy plus 7 squared. And if you wanted to check by distributing, you could definitely do that. But it's really neat. Fun fact, it's amazing. Thank you.